Hello, the name is Friedrich. This was yesterday's newspaper, Saturday 26th of August 2024. And I'm going through my memory and I'm now interpreting it differently. And there is something hidden and the motives are not allowed to say openly. I invite you to be a detective yourself and to look at it, to learn how to interpret things. And it is important, I now gray myself out, it is important you understand if that is true, this would not even give you headache or heartache. This would be of great, I think, negative influence to others. There would have been that much that I then had been someone giving work to others, and that not only in the industry, but handicraft and journalists and so on. There was the thinking, and this, of course, is state journalism. There was the thinking, ARD, ZDF, that are the two television channels under some kind of non-governmental half-state supervision. For me, it is something where I understood in my youth there were expectations. My mother had been a so-called wonder child, and I was not allowed to be one because of the negative others had experienced. Those are my parents, and this with my mother, and I was already from my today perspective, taken alongside, and others were invited to look at me. And I'm glad I was having my mother. My mother said, I have also to say what is with you, and he forbade. She was forbidding me, but she couldn't do it to have some training as a talented wonder child. I was not that talented. I can remember people said he is quite bright, but it is not that much. But this was from the perspective of one think of the other. It was, I don't know if it was valid at all. I wasn't interested. I was interested in a family, and I had difficulties at home. I do not want to go too much into it, but they had to do with the Third Reich. And this, when I saw it, first of all, I have a strange environment, and this would be a breaking of human rights. People do it in other countries with suspicious foreigners, that those are then surrounded. I overheard that it was in the Cold War. There was scientists coming back from Russia, and it was in the papers as well. It was something I understood the East German officials did. It was after unification, but the old contracts had to be fulfilled because of strange penalty in the case of violation. And with me, this could not apply, not at all. I was invited as a child because there was also interest in the field of security. We were raised, of course, negative toward war. The warfare as a means to solve things was, of course, My father, we waited his return, and he's lost in the forced combat. He had to work as a Volkssturmman somehow to prevent Russians to enter German territory. But this was the time. You saw many films about it. If you heard it from your own parents, eyewitness accounts, then it would look like something to die for Führer, Volk and Fatherland. This is not desirable. And security was essential. My mother was glad there had been German soldiers helping her. It was positive. It was positive toward the defense and the own military, but negative that those were misused. And I can remember there was fighting to two sides. One, the side of the traitors. We were no traitors, not at all, but then against the breaking of human rights. It is important that the scandal that was done by foreign spies is something totally different. That would not be accepted by me, not even in the least. My father among those foreigners who were withstanding. That happened very often, and that was with damage. And this is important to understand. This RAD, ZDF have not a good name, because it was mainstream what politics gave them. It was to be seen, unfortunately, even in the West. From the East, people thought the West television was free, because the people understood in the eastern parts that what was in the papers and in television was censored. And in the West, that was not that way. You could publish things. There was no official, and there still is no official order, but the freedom is not there because of contracts. There had been contracts to publish about this and that. Foreign countries look precisely how their country is presented in television, and there was the maligning of the old leading people in the Wehrmacht and the Reichswehr, and with us being raised to be prudent patriotics, this was something you ought to understand. Not put me in the corner of those in the resistance, because they wanted the military not to win. My mother said it was necessary to do something with the German people in Poland. There were injustices. And then there was, between the war, attacks in Prussia, East Prussian territory. And this was, with us, something I did not see in the GEZ, the official media. And then when SAT, the private television was there, it was done with the help of the industry to broaden the possibilities and to give more inner freedom. Of course, you are to stick to the truth. And this is not my idea that you buy it. Hopefully not. I'm not against it. But this is, of course, something we did not like too much. What you see is only superficial. It is the outward appearance. With us, there was very much the inner value assessed. My mother said, when she had then married my father, that to me it was known he is really the father, but it was a secret, because it was strange to father a child, but it was contracted. I was expected when the doctors could give my mother the possibility to bear children. She was having surgery, and there was something I did not find in the papers, now understanding it should have been there, but there was not too much open from the leadership because fear of enemies, like in Russia, there was then violence and killing, that was there as well. Therefore, with us, it is the inner being that is of value, and with me, I did not even have the picture of my father because it was telling, being in the garden, working the ground to get its fruit. It was important to have a healthy lifestyle. My mother said she was quite sick as a child and then had problems because of poisons. This was with the help of journalists, nearly drawn to the open, but then it was put under the carpet by government, and that was after 45. And I cannot come to conclusions. It is not known to me who that could have been. She said maybe those were enemies of my father. But these enemies could have come from several other occasions. He was not in the military, it was private, but being like in Ubiquitarium, this is a novel. It is representing somehow the work of the groups that were there for security of international business. The company was international, and it was not even known who owned it. There was disguise for security reasons, and with me it was said, if you are asked, tell that my father is grandfather and my mother the grandmother for security reasons. And there was the other mother, and she was not having the right to decide. That was my mother the elder, but my mother the younger. She was then deciding herself as well. For me, this was not a big thing. You had two adults to go to. Papa was rather at first not even willing to do too much. My father left in the Second World War. It was not known. My mother said, he said the war is already lost. Maybe he helped people to escape, and I was not having too much time to look into it. This is what my own fight had been, and there was then, of course, not the chance to go through it again. I already knew not everything. This is Papa. He was not able to help me. He was preoccupied with everyday's necessities. This man, he was strange. He came there as a preacher, and he was helping to educate us. With us, it was education to understand things and to think yourself. It was helping to understand yourself and to have then the ability to go through life. But that was not normal. There were expectations from others, and it is the way that I now understand it is illegal to come near to me by the hidden way. I already said it, and I now understand it is not, maybe not something in electromagnetic interference, like a radio without a radio. It could be coming too close, maybe because of mistaken identity. There were people asking me to be a member of a group. There was this Mr. Kiefer. He was there as a boy. his folks came from Ukraine, but it is not right to think that because I was a little bit with him at school, it was not even a friendship because I was not allowed to do so. My mother, the younger, she said, better you don't, because of politics. This was me then later, to understand who I had been. This was my trouble, working my way through, and I did it. I was not pleased with the work. It was not my choice, but what counts is knowledge of wisdom. The Bible is a book of wisdom to understand, like the Song of Solomon or the Wisdom of Solomon says, to understand the laws of life. But we had a distance to the normal churches, and a very big one. This was not my choice. I had to suffer because of it. At school, I was ridiculed. You do not even celebrate Easter, and you do not celebrate Christmas. And this was not that right. But people came to the idea. And this was something I was taught as well. Let the people talk. Let the people talk, and it is unnecessary to waste energy. Therefore, it was the 25th where we had some presents. There was no heathen symbols like it was thought by some. The Christmas tree was, it was the Hitler time, where there was an Xmas, or they had the light being celebrated instead of the real Christmas. With my mother, Christmas was important, and I was always envious. I was envious because she explained she had been there, and the father she had there, she had very good explanation and was searching for words, but my mother tongue is German, or I think so. The first month I had been in a caring facility, and then weekends at home. And I don't know what language there it had been. I was then, because I was too little, there was joking, this will turn out to be a draft, a small one, but 1.80 meters I am, and this is not a draft, not a little one anymore. And there had been a time when I was not growing enough. And then there said someone, better he is eating milk products, and it was because and other things that let me grow. But I had not chemical treatment. This was not allowed. My mother said no chemicals. And I understand there had been the wisdom to have a healthy life, but it was too costly, and I understood there was much money maybe wasted to buy food, and then it was not helping. And then people were warning. There were enemies, unseen enemies, because of the own line my forefathers had. And now I understand this is not our fault. But I thought so, okay, I honor my father because my mother did so. My mother, she was not explaining I had to honor him, she did herself. And that was role modeling. I understood my father was ridiculed by the Hitler Youth, and he was explaining like an old man does, that this is not right, what those were being taught. It was before 45. Those were with the Matura, with the Abitur, having come to be police officers, and were ridiculing him. For you, with the old morals, the time is over. And sadly enough, those had then, with this idea, having the right side as it was thought. Then came the end of the World War, and my mother was not pleased. This is really in my shoulder. It is like an ID card. I will not take it out too soon. I have no trust in doctors. Not anymore, I can't say. A little bit is left, but you have to know the doctor first. Because I understood my mother was being afraid to be treated wrong. And it was every time when she and my mother the younger as well, this is my mother the younger and this is my mother the elder, and I was in both arms and I was fed, breastfed by both. But this should not be too much to you, it is only for the background. As a detective, please understand, I was raised with the ideas they are enemies, but they won't do anything to you because you are a child. And then I overheard, even at that age, it was said, you are not the enemy. My mother was very much at home. She was being said, please, if you go on a stroll, do not do it alone. But I thought it is something my mother had done, and the others were arguing then if this had negative consequences. But now understanding there is more. And this is not to me that I fear extra. It is rather, it can't be worse. If you have enemies that had, because of that, lost the possibility of a career, you understand, she was forced to be a witness. After the war, there was judging going on, and she went because being invited to Hessen, to Frankfurt. It was beginning of the 60s, and there was a process being thought about against police officers. Police officers, like those having ridiculed my father, officially I had to, not officially, but to the outside world, there was the Petrok family, and he was the grandfather, that people had distance, and officially my father had 2 children. He was only having 1 adopted. No, he hadn't. He raised her, my mother the younger, as his own child. And the other was there, and she was there as a child because the mother was in the war. It was like human. And this is my mother, the elder. And I have not the regulations of other cultural groups where I was raised without any cultural regulations. There is belief in God because it gives you calmness of conscience, it gives you strength, and it gives you the ability to understand the laws of nature, to have a sober mind, and there was respect for other religions as well. I was invited, and it was wisdom in natural surroundings as well. I was giving a caring mother for 1 week or 2. I had been in a country where the mother then was black, or she was red, black. I don't know, there was a hut. And this was a thing, it was for me. If I wanted to explain others, it was not possible. Others thought I was dreaming and were rather ridiculing me. You can't do anything about it. But now I'm having trouble because of that. And for you it is, if you are patriotic, it should be of concern to you and you should support me. There is a stop. I will have trouble, nevertheless, if you help me or not, because bills are not paid. Telephone bill is $150 or euros, cannot be paid. And there are lying relatives who say I have enough money. It is not right to believe them. Those feel embarrassed because I explain things those cannot know, because those are not the children of my mother, but officially the grandchildren, and I do not even know if the grandchildren, according to the helping as a raving mother, the Duke of Hessen was not wanting my mother back. This is not my calculation. I heard it not that way. I heard it verbally. My mother was looking for a better home because she, as a widow, she was not a widow. The father, her husband, could come back, but there was trouble. She was not telling about it. I never heard it from the perspective in the first person, in the I was the wife perspective. She was having business in Hanover. She explained it from the third, from the storyteller's perspective, inside knowledge about the Kaiser daughter. But sometimes I thought my mother must have been at the palace herself. She was there, and then Herr von Mackensen, he of course, he saw my mother as a little baby, having walked out of, she was there I thought as a wonder child. The emperor, the Kaiser, emperor is not the right, king of kings, he was chosen to be the king to the outside. There was still several kingships in the German Reich, and it was about, with the hymn, Germany overall, not Bavaria and not Prussia, but Germany. Deutschland über alles. The hymn was, and my mother had very much inside knowledge. I was explained everything. I could ask to both, and this was my schooling at school. In comparison, I did not learn too much. And for you as a patriot, even if you are in a foreign country and you feel your German roots are important to you, you are a patriot in that matter. Those are German roots. And there is German rooting, no, it is stuttering. This is something I cannot explain. I will go offline. Hopefully that is now better. That is very strange. There's hindrance for me to record this. And now it is a little bit better. And there is something from the internet. Maybe people are looking for my IP address. If you are going online, and there is the method of transport, this is packet-based. I was there when people, as I'm not a wonder child, I'm not that. In the old days, there had been quite many, and who could think that way, and this is not wonder child behavior. If it is now, where is wisdom gone? Therefore, my mother was no wonder child, and my elder, maybe she was, but she was the own emperor's daughter, I understand. Hopefully this recording is going well. And my English is not that good, because I was being abroad among German-speaking people. And the wise man had been, to some extent, Jewish, and by some mistake, being drawn in the Stürmer, for example, those were presented as being stupid and as being not, as it was, not all were pillars of society, but many of them had been. And I knew that, and this was not explained as you ought to have to respect. It was something I was shocked to learn, that others said it had to be done to draw them out of the country. And there had then been casualties, it was said, among the people. We had no television, the newspaper. I started to read at the age of, not at 6, there was books. I was not, before school, being taught to read and write. I could have done so. There was an aunt. She was explaining words, but she was stopped because my mother, the younger, she was not wanting me to be a girl, no, to be a boy, of course. She was a girl who was then in trouble. People were having interest in her, and there was a play. If I wanted to be a girl, it was stupid. I never wanted that. It is, of course, later an illness in the people that there is not the want to be a man or a woman. I was shocked if someone, or it really happened, asked me if I wanted to be a girl. This is stupid. But I was in the theater, and there sometimes being in a costume of a girl. In the pilot film of Mr. Launton, I learned about him, or maybe he knew me as well, at Ponderosa, this cowboy, of course it is, the cowboy western, Ponderosa. You understand what Ponderosa is? It is something to show the old style of life and the working with the horse. And there was a father with 3 difficult children, and those characters were played by people who are, or who had the wish, or I don't know what, to show that there's possible to play a character. I had never an education as an actor. It was like a game to play this and that, and I was, I don't know if I was successful. There was understanding. You were not applauded. Others did it, and I rather felt then the danger that people were not willing to accept that my mother had a bright child. I also overheard that people said, how can this lady have such a beautiful child, as if my mother had been ugly? I don't know. But now understanding, if my mother had been Victoria Louise or Louisa, then she, of course, were having enemies. She was detective work doing with my father. He was in the business where the leaders were then having inherited leadership, and it was their obligation to marry a wise woman. And my grandfather, he found Pauline. It was after he was converted, or was it before? Oh, I think before. He was rather military, and there was some storytelling going on. I was curious, I wanted to know, and there could well be that my mother was at the Emperor's palace. She knew something from the inside, and she was there as a playmate. But now understanding this can't be true. The playmates, as she said, were chosen openly in the newspaper. It should have been in the Reich when she was maybe 12, 13 years old. My mother, was she with 13 years and a little horse in her sleeping room. And then came someone and said, oh, please, princess, not so loud. Your father is having someone to talk over business. Those stories, I thought, were communicated at that time because the Kaiser daughter, she did not like it too much to be called a princess. There was a want to have an own character. The British was quite good. It was recognized, but the German, the German character should be a little bit else. There was a strict rule codex, and this was not something wanted. There was a similar codex being developed, But that wasn't ready. My mother knew who raised, but this was strange. Why did she not say it was me? Why this storyteller's perspective? And this, this is something I now understand. It must have been about money. There was the empress. She was the administrator of the goods, of the values. And there were quite a part of big companies like Siemens and Opel and Volkswagen, Hanomag. And now understanding that if my mother was illegally and she filed complaints about it, but she was not heard, and that must have been put under the rug by politicians who did not want to have something to revise, and this must have been from the 50s ongoing. I myself was with the police station in Hessen and at Hanover. And there I was rather embarrassed that my mother said, my mother the younger, this would concern me, this is my finger. Okay? Yeah. And I do not like the idea that I'm somehow radioed about something. I once heard it is possible, and diplomats had trouble. This was at Havana. There was a man who was or had been counseled by the company of my, this is only symbolic, by the company, the private diplomatic company of my grandparents. No, yes, doch, grandparents. And those were in business and in the US, traveling under a different name. This was legal. And then there came someone and wanted to know if Mr. Karl May, this must have been my grandfather. And I now understand they had someone, I'm quite sure it could have been the grandfather or the father of a policeman in this town, who was the main writer. But who was owning the character? This is my mother's slogan. And with me, I had already in mind to do this as my life calling, not the whole calling, but to have on the sideline remembrance of the faith, not the church faith. This is to be differentiated. The church faith is the basis for the faith you show, the faith in humanity, and in the DDR, in Eastern Germany, there's allergy going on. I once was with a group traveling, and those ran out of the church. Only me saying maybe a little preaching wouldn't be bad. And I now understand there is preaching necessary to understand why this country had the development toward the modern style of the so-called Abendland. It is where the sun goes down. This is the east, no, it is the Abendland, the evening country. And the morning country is in German Morgenland. That is then the east, that goes up in the morning, and then it goes down. Of course, it does not, it looks like that. The sun is still there, it is shining all day. But on the other side, or on other sides of the earth, and it is important, there was faith. And then there was a demand. When my father converted, he maybe was interested in the world affairs. And there it was important, if you do business, to understand the morals and the business behavior of the people in their company. Maybe more than one company was there. I cannot quite say if it was one company or 1,000. I don't know. This is Papa. I adored him because of his consequence. He was very consequent, and he was not liking at all that people were taking advantage of. He was a helper, and some said, he said it himself, too good is stupid. To say it in German, zu gut ist dämlich. too good, to be too nice to people is stupid. You are then taking advantage in the danger that is to be pressed like grapefruit. And English is not my first language, but I better use it. If you're a patriot in this part of the world, you're not allowed to speak that open as it is done. I was in Canada. I totally had forgotten it. I was there helping out the British system, and I was representing a prince, but I'm not a prince of the British. It was helping out. If that had been taken into effect, there would have been a contract. I was trying never to do anything of that dimension without a contract. There never had been any contract. I wouldn't go into such a big endeavor and not have a contract. Where is my position in a cultural governed society or in a cultural governed family? I was chosen. It was said later, it was a strange thing. I was in a British home. It was on the first floor. You go up the stairs and they're on the left. And then entering the apartment, there had been pictures at the right. And I saw someone who looked like me. And I thought, oh, what is going on? I was in the detective mode, being in another country. Be prepared. Not that the British were mostly friendly. I was once warned. There was general. He was sent to South Africa. He was not loving too much people with German roots. I was there as a little boy, and he did not know, and I was safe. There was an aunt. Maybe it was Mrs. Margaret. She was having trouble because she was presented as a playgirl, like a playboy, but this was not what she wanted. This was not her character. It was something where traps were set, and there was then the husband who was not wanting to go one step behind her. I heard it privately. Maybe the system every time is something falling down. I'm not falling down because I'm still at the bottom. It's not possible to fall down there. But it is not something that is morally the bottom. It is something I now understand where you're not wanted because there's something going on before you come there. It is like a rumor that is like wildfire. I was raised to assess people by their own character, and not knowing on what side people had been, I befriended with ladies, of course in the British Commonwealth as well. And I rather heard that the German were that strange now, and I did not fully believe it because I knew some of that descent as well, but it may be true that there was, because of all the wounds, something now different. I overheard, and maybe they said it to me, there was the Aunt Juliane. She was a friend of my mother. She once played, no, my mother played Juliane, and there was a family standing there, and Juliane was my mother, and it was to look what the others said. And she was not pleased very much with the Dutch people. And this was not a palace. It was, there was some water, and there was a lawn, and there was a table, and she was not in front of people living together without marriage. And I, as a little boy, already knew what was going on, but I was already trained to listen to my caring mother. I was then glad at that time. I had, she was a caring mother. I don't know, for caring, to care, you understand? Good care, caring mother. I'm supposed to learn from them. I understood what people thought about German people, and that in Germany there was Bavarians thinking good about Silesians, and it is a thing you then understand was done to raise you cultural. But the own identity is myself. I'm not a German, but my roots are. And this is very much on both sides. There are some gypsies who play nice and are not. My father's group was then trained to be very reliable. He was punishing stealing of chickens, but it was difficult when there were visitors, or if there had been visitors, but I'm not in his position. And this then stopped, of course, and then you cannot put all gypsies together. It is like a group of people. Therefore, I'm not glad that those are now called Romans and Scythian Romans, because this gives the idea gypsies are in a box. There had been the mosquito makers and the metal workers that had been before the leaders were marrying wise women, and why were those not marrying inside of the wandering people, of the moving people, without a solid home? I don't know. It is something I learned in German. I'm now talking English. This is important because it is for those now abroad and knowing those have German roots. And I was glad to understand people are interested, and I myself want to teach it, that people know where they came from. And I'm not glad, I'm sad. I'm not, it is not important to explain it too much, but it is hurting that other people had known and were not communicating what was about my father. Maybe they did not know. Maybe because they had something already given by government and were not wanting to give it to me. Of course. Once I heard it, and then there was the Eastern, or still the Eastern people who say you are a bear, a wild animal like a bear, or you're a wolf, or you are a lamb to be eaten. And I was raised the way you have the police, the military, and those fight for you. You yourself can be policeman, and you can be a military, but you are not enforcing yourself. And this is now for me a thing where I see the other sides being supported, unfortunately. My mother was going to the police and asking for help. She said, this is my mother, the younger. I was with her. We had the green Audi bought at Ingolstadt. Therefore, it must have been 82 or later. And the police officer said he wants to go into that subject, but it then will be larger. He cannot do it himself. He was a leading officer at the Hanover police. There are two districts, I think 2 or 3. He was leading, I don't know exactly. He wasn't allowed to do it because it then would have gone into politics. If there had been the false or a false, or not the right one, Duchess. This was the accusation of my mother the younger. There was not the saying that it was my mother the elder. But I understand my mother the elder was having maybe a vow of quietness. Then she will be left alone. There was sometimes the saying, there was surveillance looking at, not at criminals, but looking at violent people who wanted to take revenge. And there was once the saying to my mother, please, there's someone in the town or nearby please stay at home. And I now feel, of course, embarrassed. This is not a protection. To me, it was said as well. And then there were police officers being sent from Hessen. And one addressed me at the street and was saying he is there new. And the next day he came and said, oh, please don't tell it to the others. They don't do it this way. He said to me he's new and he wants to ask me, and he was, if I had any difficulties. He was looking at the situation. And I feel embarrassed for the whole system. If that is what police does, this seems criminal. I cannot know if I'm in danger or not. The child, it was a matter among the adults. This is my mother then looking rather hurt because she herself was not allowed. There was always this saying she did something wrong. I later said she had a matter before the court. It was the House of Prussia. And I said no. Because she did not take care of children. No, this was not officially her duty. It was the duty of the other. If there are several caretakers, the one that has the position, she is to be blamed. Therefore, it was no, my mother was a caretaker, raising the children of other people because she couldn't have children of her own. This I knew. But I was not allowed to ask further. I wasn't allowed to do so. I did so later. And then I declined. This is my mother having trouble to have money enough. She was then an actress. And she said my father was having the offer. He did not want it too much. But people said, you're the only one who can do it, because he was diplomat, a negotiator, and rather not a fighter. He was somehow like an advocate. An advocate. He had been with Martin Luther King because he was invited to Berlin, and this does not give me something extra. My mother was calling the White House during wartime. This was the work of private diplomats. It was nothing extra. If you're not able to, I'm not doing that because I'm not private diplomat. Nowadays, this is my mother, the younger. Nowadays, this is not. Papa, he was suffering in the head because of an accident. And this is very sad. This is some accident in the head as well. This is a coin given to my grandfather. And I'm brainstorming. I cannot say too much. I'm sad about it. That people did not follow this complaint at police. I can't go there, I learned with that, if you have not proof. And I was at the White House because I was their helper in the diplomatic field. And I could negotiate myself. I had... because of the history, some recognition. I never had money on my own. Because of that, I had to work hours. And now I feel like being left out because I'm peaceful. And this is a critique to my belief. And this is not a religious belief. My belief is there is trust and trustworthiness. The German Treu und Glauben. This is a basis of the law. And to fight for it would mean you are in an American way of life. If the rich are somehow in a position, those have constantly lawmen fighting for them. And I have insurance, but I cannot go there. It is only to defend yourself. And even then it is critical. There was a false accusation. I had ordered some drug, and this is not right. But people go to the point to say you could make drugs out of it. And for me, a drug is legal. If I want to have an herb, I can collect mushroom. This is herbal remedy. I'm not doing that, not right now. For years I haven't done it. But you could do so. Or you can go to the trees and pick leaves and make tea out of it. And I'm very much interested in it. And I would even make my own medicine if there would be something else. And this is my right, I think. This is the right to do so. It was from of old that medicine was at some point being remanufactured. And this was something then coming to the drug of the headache drug that is well known. And I think there was the family somehow inside it. But there was never anything my mother had in the pockets except what they got working for hours. My mother, the elder, she was not allowed to work, and she was not willing to sign anything, and I'm not willing to do that, because I have the understanding they are politicians having something with others behind my back. Behind my back. This is not allowed to do so. I can speak on my own, and I always wanted to do so. Now the false state doctors are inventing diagnoses. I'm over 50 years old, and I should have known before. I was in the care of the elderly, and I never had problems with explosions. But the false state doctors give diagnoses that then would make it necessary to surveil me, and I'm not talking to people under that false idea. I'm not doing so. I'd rather not talk to leaders, and please stay away. This then I would say. And it's important, I want to have the written form. People should explain to me. I do not want to meet those again I had in my youth. And then the whole life between, I had many trouble. Much trouble. I had that many different troublesome situations. Please stop it when it goes sharp. I have not found the other. It is important. This is really what I draw down to have a retraining. And this is important to know. It is right. It is not my invention. And if there had been values, and those people would claim those are relatives, I already should have some in my hands. You understand? I'm not willing to overlook that. Not at all. And this was shown me, and my mother, she was a caretaker for castles as well, but doing it without any profit. I'm not doing it without profit. I never had been wanting to go to church convent. People were saying it to malign my name. Because I'm a believer does not mean that you are to judge about my belief. Do not put me in a sect. This is my warning. This is my warning. Do not go into a sect. This is German, and it says it is a real account. With that, I got into a trap of a religious sect. And it is very much important that I see the danger. You see, maybe the name you understand. I warn you, do not go into any group that is promising you fast solutions, that is promising you people always telling the truth. There is individual judgment necessary about individual characters. I not only once, but twice was tricked. I had a very good friend, and we made contracts in case of the atomic war. Then there was death expected, and he then would have had the procurer, the allowance to do my business. And he was in Switzerland, and there came a telephone call, and I said he is no friend anymore. That is not there anymore. But to him I said, the friendship can go on, but it will be different, of course, without any allowance to talk on my behalf. You cannot have someone who goes to a bank and he's asking for what could be there for me. I asked myself and I found out nothing. It looked like my mother was telling fairy tales. Now I understand it is the ancestry that was hidden. And I'm not being interested in Prussian relatives. I'm not interested in Hanover relatives. And I'm not interested in Hessen relatives because I was intensely looking, and I'm not interested in gypsy relatives. I'm interested in gypsies because I want to help them. Maybe be a missionary. Maybe be a missionary in the business field. It is not only religious, but I want to be free. I'm not a gypsy. I have nothing against them. I'm tolerant. But there was an ugly idea from an American businessman. He said, there is the Moldavian Republic. You could fit there. And I looked there and the people behaved strange, sitting in the streets. And I thought, okay, how can I help them? I have nothing. Not talking my language, and this is maligning my forefathers, because my grandfathers had married a woman of the Western nobility. And these were from the Piasts, from the Piasten. And this is not quite sure. I have something, and I'm not against gypsies, do not misunderstand me. I met some very reliable people, and those say gypsy is not a good thing to say because it sheds a wrong light. But for me, gypsy is someone who is, in German, Zigeuner, who is not negative. For me, not necessarily. It is someone who can be there without fear. Those know the nature. And there is respect, and I expect respect toward me as well. And I learned some, and there was a distance among the belief. It is not the biggest problem. If you are on a hunt, you need to rely to someone that the animal, I was hunting bears, not alone, but it is dangerous. Yes, I was taken with a businessman to bear hunts. I was there as a young boy. I was better equipped than today. I had a gun, and I put two boxes full of ammunition in my pocket. Then there was a movie done out of it. There was a camera somehow. I don't know how it was done, and I shot quite a wolf. There was an attack, and people now saying I'm crazy. My brain is not working right, therefore help me if you know something. And this is detective work, and you can help if you're interested in German history and in the history of the gypsies, the cattle makers and the gun makers. There had been the trouser makers, there had been every other maker. There were shipbuilders. Pirates needed good ships, but I'm not a pirate anymore, not right now. And I'm very much really taking it very heavy on myself that life, the life of a human being has value. I'm regarding the life of a human being more than 200,000 times more than the life of an animal, but an animal has not to suffer unnecessary. And this is something that shows off in life. I rescued others because I did so, and my father did it because he did so, because of his own character. And he was not wanting to hear, this now pays off for you. You have now a wealthy Jewish at your hand. This was maligning his name, and he was exploding. This is in the character. This is not to be changed. And if you give me medicine to make me quiet, but I can be quiet all the time if it is necessary. I had a good relationship to children. Even being a child, I was invited to care for a young girl who was not trusting anybody. And then it was again. And then in the DDR, Eastern German children's homes, there was looking for a father figure. And it was in New York as well. And there was boy, and I understood he wanted to have a father to give him money. Of course, this was not to be expected. And I don't know who put that there. I can't change it. It was a group of cultural extras. And there was necessity to give them protection after World War II. At that time, there was maybe my father the only military, or ex-military. He was private military as well. The family was trained over the years, over the centuries. If you do not defend yourself, you are dead. You're stone dead. You are then not there anymore. That even the women, my mother was, she said she was in training for women. I don't know how much, but one time she was alone at home, and there was a break and enter. She heard it, and she jumped at the age when she was married, I think. She was then not the youngest one, but she jumped on, I don't know if she could jump that, or she climbed on a box, maybe drawer. And then she jumped on the burglar and had him in her grip. And then she understood it was my father. Nearly she had killed him because he was on break and enter, and a woman alone at home. Therefore, my mother was a fighter. But she was adoring life. She was helping me. She was cleaning. The time my mother was at school, she had to be a teacher. She liked it, but she was then telephoned after work, and this took much time out of the little time I had with my mother, the younger. Therefore, we had a life full of stress. And then there was one of the siblings. He was given extra lesson because he was legasthenic and very, very much. And he cannot explain himself. Even now, it's not that. And therefore, with him, I have excuses. Business is not for him. I don't know why that is that different, but it is. I don't know if he's talking English at all. And this is the younger, he's different as well. Therefore, and I understand it is biologically as well. I could never have expected. Of course, it was there, but they're never talking about. And you couldn't understand that. How come other biological DNA is in your family? It was different. Maybe it was a broad range of DNA inside of one. But now I understand I could have known. But when asking, people did not give me any support. And those I asked were not other private, but were state entities. And it was very much after it, and I'm still after it. And I think there are people who are in themselves being honest. And this is a thing to tell. And I'm not negotiating because it's not possible to negotiate. I had quite fun doing pictures, movies, but I never saw them. It was fun to put on makeup, look like someone else, or to have a wig, and that as a young boy. I thought in other countries people have money and they buy such nonsense. I would have liked to have it as well, to change my appearance from time to time, but there was no money to buy it. A little bit those cheap ones, maybe, but this is not to be. This is then understood like carnival, and therefore I know, because being on the movies or in the movies, Mayberry is such a thing. I was allowed to play a little bit in reenactment. It is then on YouTube, of course, being black and white, and the others have contracts. I think I'm not allowed to tell too much. But did I have a contract? I don't know. Maybe, I don't think so. With the others, it was that their income was being at the movies, and those talked about it. Please ask someone else when I had questions. And there was then the pilot project of Dennis the Menace. There was something where people saw a comic strip, and this comic strip was from the 50s. And then the whole series was explained to the public as being drawn in the 60s. But if it was from 75 on, and people must have known at the quarter where it was drawn, where it was recorded. Yes, of course, but maybe those are quiet about it for some reasons. And for me it is not that important, but later it had been, and I was not very fond of it. I thought this was a character, a time where I was in the wild youth years, in the Pflegejahren, that it was interesting for others, and for my mother it wasn't. Today I'm thinking if I had not had the chance, I would have been different. I was even ordered to be funny and crazy, and later the repairman came and repaired the damage. But at home, no, it was not possible. And my mother said there was training for my father as well. He learned to talk at a private theater. Maybe it was the custom to do so. But the times were different, and I always thought it was a different world. My mother was very fond of Silesia, and there it was different. But she was not wanting to go there because it is now another country, another language, and the old people had been chased away. Therefore, it was long gone, or it was a submerged society. Of course it was. And then I met some people from abroad, and there was this Mr. Jack Benny. I think he was a contracted actor. He had a co-worker that was black. And this was maybe his best friend. It is now my interpretation. Therefore I understood, but I'm not a member of any group. You have the friends inside your group, and then if you are a little bit different, maybe sensitive, having quite other values, then you find you like-minded even in other countries. And this was something that is had been in the papers. But is that right? I think so, it was. There was the line broken. There were quite strict rules. I'm not a member of any nobility house, and I never had been, and it is important to me to understand if I had been, then this is a legal issue. This would have been very, very hard for me to understand. It is like being raped. It is like being raped if you understand. There had been a house, of course there was interest that I follow a group or go to a contract, but this had not been. Think about it, this is like being raped. It is my own family, I stick to my own. I'm not going to some other family. There was the invitation of a nobleman that I could be adopted, and I said no. I said no. I thought about my father coming home, and then I'm legally the child of someone else. But even afterward, Papa was still living, and Papa was considered a father. And my mother, she was having trouble with fellow students. She said there had been agreements, others could visit the family, but those were being counseled by my mother. Therefore, I knew some of them. And this would be even worse. Did those not know? Did those not know who I was? I once heard about someone, and I said, he said something, that there was something hidden. And I said, yes, people say many things, but no proof. I went to a bank, and it was beforehand promised I get some funds. And I said, oh, I do not need too much. It should then be like welfare money. But now understanding, if it had been my own, this would have been criminal. I was said to bring my my ancestry document, and I was looking, and there is no ancestry. It was explained to me. Your mother is not even known. There was through an embassy an asking in Great Britain. It was a foreign embassy, and they did it at no cost because I was on welfare. As a student, a BAföG is like welfare. And I got 250 euros BAföG, and my mother was not able to give me more. More than, I think, 200. And this is not euro, this is D-Mark. I was then supposed to live on 250 euros, 500 Mark, 500 D-Mark. And this was not possible. I had to move back, and I lived in the basement. It was moldy and really stinking a little bit because of mold. But this was the only room where I could stay. And this is really true. I had as a visitor this writer, Janet Oak, and I explained it to her. And I also said it is unusual maligning your own family. I know that, but I do not want to malign them. But I want to say those are not able to give me an education that fits my ability. This was not possible. And I'm very glad I did so, because she took notes, and Janet Oak was the writer for this series. She was contracted writer, and there was a group helping her. And she was done it as good as possible with historical reliability. And she once was visiting, but she did not tell too much. She was in a group as well, in a cultural group. I'm not. I was looking, but if there is none, I will not go to a group that would closest fit. I don't do that, because I was interested, I'm still interested in the law. And I looked into it, And this was not helping me, the law. That the law, I could then be given a daycare, no, a daytime shift, not at night. But only if the company is being able to do so without having a disadvantage. And this was then something where the union, the Gewerkschaft im Gesundheitswesen, big, said, the chief said to me, Möhring, you have then the consequences. If you go before the court, it is not 100% sure, and I didn't do so. I had to go out of the business, and at that time my mother died. Therefore, there was much stress. She was having cancer, and because of that, the ancestry was no topic, not at all. Because having cancer, you cannot go after it, but I'm not having cancer. I'm having problems with the state system that wants to give me unnecessary help, and I do not want to have it. I want to stay free. I'm not going that far as, I don't know what state in the US is saying, be free or dead. I'm not going that far. But freedom is very important for me. I do not want to have unnecessary help. And this being assessed like being crazy is something like it. Especially the reason for thinking so is that I asked government, there is, I said, a new discovery. My ancestry goes back to Wilhelm II. I first wrote it down as being the great-grandfather. Now he's the grandfather, quite sure. But my mother as well, the younger. This to Wilhelm is through mother, the elder. She being the daughter, most likely. The other daughter, no, the other duchess. And this is not prepared because having no feedback at all. And I'm not crazy to ask for funds. It is something people do to help, or they do it to have an outcome. And it is not to have something to show to an audience. This is no stuttering again. I'm going to a browser to show you something about the line that is possible. There it is called Welfen. It is Hanover, Braunschweig-Lüneburg, and there are wealthy inheritances. And if my mother was the right emperor's daughter, this was gone to wrong hands. And I think for politics, politicians were not willing to look into it. And I'm not interested in that family. Thinking about it, that others were having the cultural inheritances and then bringing it to the market, selling it all day, this gives me vomit, the feeling of vomit. Because there is strange behavior as well. This you could find. You can go there and look if you like. I do not need it too much. I cannot prove it by newspaper articles. I can show you the trace that most likely there was a wrong duchess. I cannot say this was my mother. Now it is hopefully being opened. No, it isn't. Let me see. Let me take another chance. Also, it is very important that I use English, even if it is not that good. It is very rusty. I was once in the US, I'll tell you this story in between. There I was talking to a man who was able, by the pronunciation, to say if someone was born in the United States. And with me, he got the wrong result. Yet now I know it was the right one, that I was born there. And it is not my fault. and that he then had lost the credibility, because with me the official document said, I'm born here. You see, this is the other in Hessen, and he is most likely an adopted son. But he is not in the line of inheritance. In the line there had been my mother. Now understanding this must have been my mother. She was applying for the position and she was declined because of false DNA. But it was thought, it was never excused. And the adoption was most likely because of the inheritance. And this, of course, is something not to be excused. She was not dying. This is Hirnentzündung, meningitis. My mother was not dying by it, but it is not proven. I only have the account. My mother said, the elder said, she was a private doctor without any studying at university, like a doctor. And she thought this meningitis was to be healed. And she overheard, she went there as a detective, she applied as a nurse, and she was nursing the children, and then overheard that this little Johanna was there to be dying. The parents, the adoptive parents, were arguing they did not want damaged brain in its child. My mother took her home, and then my mother was looking for a new home. I now come to the conclusion that could have been this Johanna. My mother was a caretaker for children, therefore I understood my mother was adopted. By my father, I don't know if they did it, if they brought it that far. This is important. My father was not adopting the other girl. The other girl is rather having quite a group, a cultural group. She was saying that she was becoming a member in the group that had been the Third Reich being suppressed. I'm not exactly saying whose group she wanted to become a member. I do not even know if it had been the case, but there was no contact. Already informed her about my findings, but she is not allowed, I think so, it's my interpretation, to say anything. And I feel, of course, threatened. What is if those nobility houses already have plans to attack me or to make me quiet? It is then your help that could help me survive financially, because the banks are not giving me any new loan. I need every year, let me say every month, at least 200 euros. Every 2 years, 5,000 euros as a loan, and I could get them because having a part of Immobilia, but I cannot sell it because I have only part of it. Therefore, I'm at a conflict. And this is showing some deliberate using of those conflicts. It's looking like the surrounding is infiltrated. I have no proof for it. Of course, hopefully it isn't true. This you can look into. There had been conflicts, and this would show for me as some kind of proof. There is not a family in this Dutch family that is normal, because fighting before the court, what are they doing? Are they using the court's decision as an excuse? It is always about money or good or values. As an excuse, the court is saying it is ours. This could be a trick, okay? I'm not wanting to say it. This is the Duchess that was there visiting Canada in 1962, and she is, of course, looking different. And for me, this is proof she is not the original, not the Kaiser's daughter, and the whole estate was inherited to the Kaiser's daughter. This is the information in newspapers and so on. But if she is not the Kaiser's daughter, is she someone working for foreign countries? I don't know. I can't say that. Only detective thinking. And this is the picture that represents the couple of, this should then be the husband of the shown lady. Oh, and this then is the face of Victoria Louise, and this, according to what I come to understand, is very much resembling my mother. This is resembling very much to the likeness of my mother, but it is no proof. It is no proof, okay? I cannot prove it because understanding there is such much value to it. You see, and he is called Cumberland. This is not what I want to be called. Cumberland is someone in the British system, and maybe the values of the Cumberland are then belonging to the British House. Of course, I'm not interested belonging to someone. And this is taken 1930. I don't know if this is right 1930, but if this is, then it could be this time the other. Maybe the first time. My mother said, as inside knowledge, you might look it up yourself if you like. This is, according to what the papers say, it must have been the Duchess that was not the original. My mother said from her inside knowledge she went home one day, 2 days before, or even a couple of days before, and then she had changed the guards. This must have been the photograph where she was welcomed as the Duchess, and then she must have decided to exclude the other. This is detective thinking. It is not proven. But understanding that that many judgments before the court are there, then every judgment would be with police work that are not worth to be called police work. Understand? If every document before the court gives the members of this family, not my family, gives the members the ground to say the court gave it to me, then this is of course a trick. If you can bear it, I can't. This again, this is rather new. No, it isn't. 2 years ago. There is again a court hearing with the judgment of the now modern days members of this house. I'm not a member, and I'm not interested because how can you bear it? Here you see it. I'm not saying that I'm in favor of writing in the papers what could be the case. I'm not. And this maybe I put myself out of. It is working okay. You can have, no, enlargement first, no it's not. Is this the Empress herself? Oh. I do not know any of them, and I'm not that much interested. Of course, it is not the fault. It is not the fault of the members who don't know about it. But what can you do? What can you do if you know about it? If the government is supporting the false duchess, you can't do anything. You understand? It is, of course, difficult. Therefore, I'm feeling like someone unwanted. But think about that company. It is a rather big company. It is a couple of companies the Dutch owned. And it is the same in Hessen. And then from both houses, my mothers were illegally forced out. It is of course the background. Other people are interested. But I'm not interested to solve it. First, the ground must be corrected. The ground must be corrected. And this is urgent need because time is running. I'm not wanting to have this at all because I'm rather feel disgusted. The idea, think about it, the idea that my mother would fit, but this is not a proof. She is the real one. This is not a proof. It is rather a proof that the Duchess being there is not the real one. And I'm not liking the German government at all. I always felt those had been under the supervision of the Allied, doing foreign politics, even inside of the country. And I was always thinking I have to pay for the ugly wartime. I'm not wanting to do so. And I now understand this is not even necessary. Who says I'm a one who is to be counted among the of Hanover or the of Hessen? I would have liked to see originals. Maybe there is one original. Super Papaya. This is something that was done in novels as a children in Lodz and in Breslau and in California. This is officially California only. And my mother said Justus could well be the father. Oh, it is not working right. Heidi, this is something my mother said. She was maybe in reenactment being Heidi, my mother the younger. And you know Heidi? This is quite a part of Switzerland. And this is something where it had been the case, this is much blown out of proportion. It had only been one time, and not that many dangerous situations. There had been the order to go into a country without being seen, not normally, and this was somehow at wartime, and it was then jumping from a high altitude and to reach your goal in a secret mission. And it could well be that the one who set me was the soldier himself, but I don't know. People don't tell it if it had been secret, and I'm not interested to tell secret things. But scandals at the king's courts. Of course there had been scandals. This, of course, is no one who wants to have it. And those maybe real photographs, but they are reenactment pictures. Therefore, some people, and who's that? I once learned that Rasputin, he was a character in itself. I was this time speculating. I'm not saying that the Duchess was wrong, but according to my calculation, I come to the conclusion it must have been the case. Otherwise, my whole ancestry can't be true. And now I understand there had been people at the doorstep talking strangely, offering me service, like going somewhere and forcing people to give something. I do not want that service. I needed, and I said it from the beginning, I needed the lawful way. There had been in the 90s people coming from Russia, and they wanted to give me some money. And I said, no, I need a written letter with it. I cannot accept money without knowing where it is from. Maybe there is some contract with it. Therefore, I'm not doing that business. I'm not allowed to do anything secretive. Of course, you have to follow the law, otherwise you're a criminal. And I'm no criminal, not at all. And it's important, I rather feel that the law system is behaving criminal, like a criminal system, to give me a bad name. And I'm not following the political idea that this is only a mistake. It was over the years, my mother had to endure very much the Allied idea that other things are more important. You understand? Other things are more important. This is politically the idea. I'm not saying I'm more important, but I'm saying it is very much of importance to understand that I am running out of finances. And there is some illness, but it is because of apnea, having difficulties sleeping and breathing enough. And there is not even the willingness in the government to make it a little bit more healthy, the color of my skin. There is not even willingness to give me the status quo of a premature born. This is very important for my pension, that illnesses are then accepted as the aftermath of my birth. I once said, and I thought it all the time, I was ordered to be a healthy child, to train, to have exercise, to think about my health, but it felt like an order. I was not allowed to be otherwise, and I'm quite healthy. That is, I have no inherited diseases. And this is quite true and important. I'm now looking for a way to show this picture I found today, and this really looks like my mother. But is this proof? No, it isn't. People, I think, must already know. But they should already know, because there was that much inside knowledge. My mother shared with others from that time. It was the 70s. And with my birth, did people know I was supposed to be a prince? I never was. Not till now. I have no house. Without a house, you cannot be a prince. You're representing your house. There was interest. And then it was said, the German schooling system, is that good? The German schooling system is that good that there is no need Is it? And it is really true that there had been the visits at police stations. I'm not understanding why there was not even interrogation of my mother. There was no police officer at the home. This time, when I asked if there had been any issues about my security, there had been police officer from Hessen. And there had been now the calculation and the interpretation of sayings in between at the doorstep or even at the bus stop. There had been someone playing my part in a movie in Hessen. But this Michael is not me. He was a lookalike for one day, no, not the whole day. For 15 minutes it was allowed. There was a party in a party room in the state. This had been, it was like a cafe. And there I was maybe 14 years old. There was the saying, you are not allowed to be the guest. We do not want to have you there. Because of the behavior of my parents, I think, in the Third Reich. And there this Michael was, but he was not allowed to do it on other occasions. And I'm not following the idea that at Rheinmetall, the other is there to do anything without my consent. There was the idea to give me this position. I did not want to work in the business of building tanks. What he did is his own, okay? There is no stocks from me there. If there are stocks, this should be very precisely that from Hanover, Braunschweig-Lüneburg, and Hessen. And this goes back to 1939, and in the other from the beginning. But if then there's something missing, this is another thing. You cannot put it out of thin air. But what is with Karl? Did people understand we were that weak? We could not fight our way through? Yes, I think so. Our weakness was taken advantage of, and I think this is not allowed in modern society. And then maybe even from states. Because I was a helper in the White House, people knew me and the address. I think nothing was found, okay? I was never a member of any secret service. It is like being in a convent. People said I wanted to be a diplomat, not a secret service member. And I never wanted to be one. I didn't enter. And I was never the chief. It was the idea that I could become the chief of a kind of secret service in Czechoslovakia. This did not happen. I resigned a day before, to make that clear. Because people said, we are forced to offer you this possession, therefore I resigned one day before. There was no error. And there is no patriarch, sister or brother talking on my behalf. And if there is a sign with F, N-O-A, N-Ü, N-Ö natürlich, then it is not me. There's someone else with a name similar, but this is no excuse. But if state officials are working that negligent, this is a matter to think about. There are many court hearings, you see, and this is showing it is not working, okay? I'm of the internet, but it is stuttering nevertheless. I do not understand with 16 megabyte. I once knew the difference. One is the traffic and the other the storage space. There shouldn't be that stuttering. There must be something coming from the outside. And I talked to Kabel Deutschland or Vodafone that this is not to be accepted. I want to be an address, an IP address that is changing every time I go to the internet because of this security issue. And I was not taken, I thought it was not taken serious enough to help me. Therefore, I have great difficulties not having enough money to look for something else. You could, of course, pay for VPN. I have not the money to do so. And there is that less money. There is no good doctoring. And I'm not wanting to be a member of any nobility family. Not at this point where I had to go through that many honor-cutting experiences. There was a little bit talk from someone from the House of Hanover. It looked like giving me something to get rid of me. It looked like my mother had been a worker and she was getting some reward. And I said, no, I can't do that. There are rumors my mother was, and the man said, no, it is not possible. Yes, it is possible that you were lied at, but I'm not doing it behind doors. It is not possible. And I do not want to be threatened, not directly, not indirectly. There had been people from Russia wanting to help me with their muscles. I do not want to go to that extent. I need muscles to defend me, but not to go like a gold digger and to look for money somewhere. This I will never do. This is an honor to my forefathers to do it the legal way. They had been military, but you do not do military work against individuals, first of all, and not against a state that is as solid as a state in the European Union. But why was I then forced to know politicians? I don't like political behavior, this putting in a box and then politically negotiating. I don't like it. I first need grounds, solid grounds. I do not want to be a member of a Netherlandish house or Danish house or Swedish house or other. Because I wanted to build my own house and I still want to do it. But I need funds, urgently I need funds. And maybe I come again to a camera, and this shows you the way. PayPal, me, BRESLAU-FRIENDS. And I'm of course not a member of any Jewish group, because I can't do it to my forefathers. Those are not Jewish. Even if an aunt had gone to a Jewish group, this aunt most likely was given my mother to care for her because the parents were lost in the war. There had been many casualties, and then families were put together. But this is not legally. In my case, this aunt, she left my mother in 82, and then did not care at all. Therefore, it is not a question. It is really a fact that there is no daughterhood, if it is possible to call it that way. My mother was caring, and then my mother said, I put you as my successor. The others are not even listening. Me talking about history. My mother was very fond of Hessen, and she was, by some reasons, not being allowed to be there. How could it be possible that my mother, most likely being the original Johanna of Hessen and not having died in 39, why was it possible? She applied for this position and no one was even being interested. Is it politics, suppressing the truth not to look old? Why was there never honoring for this diplomat? He had left some money to do so. Was it because there came people from Ukraine claiming to talk for me? There had been people like this Mr. Kiefer. It was said he was somehow related to Mr. Putin. I could never prove it, and I could never contradict it. And this is not important for me. I judge people by their own character. I was a little bit befriended with him. But this is gone, long gone. It was in 79. I think I talked to him a little bit on the street. But my mother gave me orders before not to go to Ukrainian culture groups. Those are difficult. Therefore, I was never a member of any Ukrainian group. Was there someone else playing this illegally? There is a beekeeper. He helped policing, I think. But I was not informed that he took to trick others my character. If I had known, I would have already asked him. And with this Michael, this is of long gone. It was in the 80s, early 80s. But this is 24, okay? We have the 28th of October in 24, and there are still lawsuits going on about possessions of the Welfen of the House of Hanover. And I'm not talking to them privately. I don't do it. This is first about honor. This is first about culture. And what people had lost is that me giving hundreds of thousands work and having maybe a little bit different work culture, this is your lost. And I had never been able to build something up again like the worldwide net of ubiquitarianum, for example, or the supply chain from mining to the ready-to-go product. I would have liked to do so, and I'm quite able to do it without any further studying. And I like politics to respect me and to give me written information only. And I like the family to help me. I ask many of them. I need a new loan, about 5,000 euros. And there is security needed, or words spoken on my behalf, and no one is helping me. And this is the Patrick family not knowing that I need some help. Who is suppressing them? I think this is not a normal behavior, but I do not want to excuse them as well. No talk behind closed doors. This then would look like the mafia having a talk with each other. I'm not a member of any mafia. I was once a helper to solve a problem in Italy, but it was from the external viewpoint, and I was still a young boy. There was respect for my forefathers, and this was not the Western nobility, I think. It was the Eastern nobility, and I want respect from both sides to the other. Thank you very much. This is Friedrich, 28th of August in 2024. Thank you.